We have a wasp, folks. Hello, and welcome to my podcast. I'm Naomi, and this is Naomi Joy Knits, where I tell you all about my knitting and whatever other random tangents come up. Oh, must remember to get my book, because I forgot to talk about it last week. I already had my book. It was all ready. I'm all prepared. So, welcome to my channel where I talk about my knitting, and sorry about the noise, but once the wasp has found its way out, I will close the window. Please do leave a comment, like, subscribe if you enjoy my podcast, share it on Instagram. My Instagram is Naomi Joy Knits, and my Ravelry is NJ Knits Podcast. And I think the wasp has done a classic wasp and flown away from the open window. So feel free to get in touch, tell me what you're working on while you watch this. I love to see the comments below and respond to them. I love to hear from you and know what's going on with you. So this is kind of why I started this channel. I have a really crazy work schedule, so I can't really be regular and like go to a knit group or meet up very easily, so this is kind of like my knit group. It's just me. So please join my knit group and chat to me. Today I have my amazing viewer mentioned last week that I should knit up a cozy for my tea, and I definitely will, but I've been a bit stressed with my knitting lately, so I haven't been doing a lot of me knitting, and I think that's gonna change. So I didn't make a cozy, not yet, but I will do. This tea though has gone pretty cold, so we don't need a cozy now. My beautiful mug that does get very hot because it doesn't have a handle. I'm drinking some tea from the Banff Tea Company, which I talked about a couple weeks ago, and it they don't put like what's in the tea on the label when you buy it. Like it's in the shop, but then you buy it and then it's not there, and it's like, look it up online, and I'm like, never gonna do that. And so it is black tea, I know that much, but I don't know what else really. There's a bunch of other stuff in it. It's got a bit of a vanilla feel to it, but I have some almond milk in it, so couldn't tell you if it's the almond milk that I'm tasting or not. You can tell I've got a very bad sense of smell and taste, but it's not COVID. It's just how I am. I once had a banana flavored yogurt and I ate it and I was like, is this vanilla? And someone was like, it's banana. It's really strong artificial banana flavor. And I was like, yes. Didn't taste it. Anyway. Let's jump right into all the knitting and things. This is my cherry jumper, which I made when I was in Canada. This is made with just one strand of alpaca from Yarn Undyed, and I love the bind off that is done on this. This is a cherry by Midori Hirose. She is the one of the famed ranunculus. I did make one ranunculus. My ranunculus, when I made it, everyone has like gone down in needle size. I made the ranunculus in the full like 6mm needle, and it was like tiny. I don't know why it ended up so small, but I was just like, this does not feel super oversized, and I didn't even go down in needle size. I was knitting it with like a really fine lace weight yarn, so maybe that must be it. But I was under the impression that when you go smaller in yarn but you keep the needle size the same, that you're not really making the gauge smaller, if that makes sense. I feel like I learned this from Roxanne Richardson. I learned most things from Roxanne Richardson. But like, I feel like what she said was, if you have a big needle size and like the yarn that's appropriate for that needle size, so say you have like a 6mm needle like the ranunculus, and you have a worsted weight yarn with the 6mm needle, you'll get like whatever gauge you get. And then if you go down to like a DK weight yarn and you stay with the 6mm needle, you'll get that same gauge. It'll just be more holy. And then if you go to like a fingering weight with the same 6mm needle, you'll have the same gauge still. It'll just be more and more holy. So like you can see this is very holy because I used probably a 6mm needle, and this is about a lace weight or really light fingering weight yarn. So that was the impression I was under. So I don't know why my ranunculus ended up so small, but it's being given away as we speak, potentially, if my parents remember, which is always a touch and go situation. It's being given away to a 3-year-old child. It'll be a nice oversized, soft thing for her. Complete digression. So I'm wearing my cherry, and actually, speaking of the ranunculus, isn't a complete digression because I knitted the ranunculus in this yarn. So that yarn lives on. This is lace weight merino by Malabrigo. I fell in love with Malabrigo when I was in Prague last time because there's a knitting shop that I found it in, and I was like, what is this amazing colours, and it's so soft. But anyways, I got this Malabrigo from Malabrigo. Okay, that knitting shop and Malabrigo is the reason I found out about the knitting community. So follow me on this journey, everyone. So, Malabrigo, I went to this knitting shop in Prague to get some yarn and needles for teaching some colleagues how to knit. Found Malabrigo, like all of the Malabrigo, like Rasta, the colours are so everything, and it's so soft. And so I got all this Malabrigo, and then when I went home, I was like, okay, I need to, focus on not buying new stuff, because I did try and do that 1 year of reusolution, where you don't buy anything new for a year and you try to just reuse things and buy them used. And I tried to kind of carry that on. I failed. I did not succeed at doing that all year. But I tried to kind of like, in lieu of doing it for 1 year, I'm going to try to vaguely do it for the rest of my life and sort of fail at it always, but try. Which I think there's a lot of validity to that, like you can beat yourself up for failing, or you can be patient with yourself, and you don't have to like be proud of yourself or think you're amazing for trying, but you also don't have to beat yourself up. I think there is a middle ground where you don't have to be like a proud person, but you also don't have to be mean to yourself. You can just be nice to yourself and continue to try and continue to fail. I think that's where I'm trying to sit on that one. Anyways, so when I went home, I was like, okay, I'm in love with Malabrigo yarn, but I would like to try and buy it used, or buy it from a D-stash or find it on eBay or something. So I was like searching through eBay for people's D-stashes, and I found this on eBay. Someone was getting rid of some lace weight, and I didn't really understand fully about like weights of yarns, really. I've been knitting for a long time, but I haven't really known like all of the like kind of obvious things about knitting. I've just kind of done it. It's like if you've like been making cookies since you were a kid, but you never like knew what the baking soda does. You just kind of shove stuff together, and you have no awareness of like why do you put baking soda in cookies, or why do you put whatever? What does the flour do? It's kind of like that. Like, so I've just had no awareness of like yarn weights and like what you use them for, and the fibers. Like I made a pair of socks out of alpaca and went, oh, this is really drapey. I didn't really understand. Anyway, so I got this lace weight, and then I was like, oh, lace weight is really, really, really thin. I don't know what I would use this for. So it kind of sat around for a while. Anyway, I had some of this Malabrigo, and then I was like, oh, I'm going to try and find some patterns to make something with this Malabrigo. I had this idea to make like some super fine gauge like mittens or gloves with the lace weight yarn, and I thought, oh, that would be really cool. And so I was looking up mitten patterns, and then I found Ravelry, right? Because I was on the Malabrigo website, and I was looking at different patterns on the Malabrigo website, and then somehow that linked me into Ravelry, and then I was able to like search for Malabrigo patterns on Ravelry, and so then it was like patterns that use Malabrigo, and there was projects that use and then I was like, Ravelry? And then it was like rabbit hole, and then I found Ravelry basically. So that's the story of how I discovered there was like a vibrant knitting community that I could maybe get involved with. And that was what happened in COVID, basically, when I got back from Prague, had this obsession with Malabrigo, and went down the Ravelry rabbit hole, and now here we are together. So thank you, Malabrigo and Prague and everything. Anyway, this is my cherry. I love it. I'm going to make another ranunculus that actually fits me, and I'm surprised at how much I love this jumper, and I wouldn't have even like made it if it hadn't been for Kat at Heather and Hops, who made it and was talking about it, and I was like, see, on the Ravelry page I saw it and I thought, no, that's not for me, but once Kat was going on about it enough, I was like, no, that is for me, I want it. Anyway, so I will start us off with, there's no finished objects. I've been plugging away at this this test knit, and I'm gonna have to admit to you right now that I'm officially sick of my ice yarn. So I was telling you about this yarn I got on eBay. I have a whole bag just with this yarn in it. I'm closing that because the wasp has gone away and it's really noisy now, and I'm really sorry. Also, just as a side note, aren't these shorts cool? Got them in a charity shop and I'm pretty obsessed with them. That is all. So, I got this yarn. We'll tell the short story. This yarn is called Ice Yarn, and it is of very light fingering, I will say. It says that the gauge is, so it's 25% alpaca, 20% wool, 55% acrylic. Don't love that. Because I find acrylic itchy, actually. It can quite often be itchy. It can sometimes be really, really, really soft. But this acrylic, I don't know. Anyway, 50 grams is 350 meters. So it's very light and it's very thin. And that is, it's between fingering and lace weight, that meterage. I think lace weight gives you about 400 meters for 50 grams. Could be wrong about that. Anyway, it's a lot. 3mm needles. I used it held double to make my November jacket, which I love. And then I decided to make a tee with it. And I'm doing a test knit for Boho Dream Designs. The lovely Danielle, who's fantastic and just had a baby. Congratulations. Anyway, so I'm making that, and then when I was in Canada, I bought this possum yarn because I wasn't enjoying the feel of this yarn, and I thought, well, maybe I could pair this together. Like, this is got a lot of halo to it. It's a cashmere and possum down and silk, so I mean, it's luxurious. And I thought paired together, maybe they would make, it would be like, I could do a project with them paired together and it would kind of, I don't know, make this yarn feel nicer. I still think that would have been a great idea, but in the end I didn't do that because I did a panic cast on. This is, where is the name? I think it's called Air. Luxurious Series, Blended Cashmere and Brushtail Possum. I think it's from New Zealand because I know they have a possum problem. This looks backwards. That's crazy. I think I need to change that. So it's 40% cashmere, 40% brushtail possum down, and 20% mulberry silk. So it is luxury. And instead of using it paired together, I ended up casting on a sock with it. And I mean, look at this. Now, I could definitely potentially say that this sock is a little bit on the small side. It's only 54 stitches. 56, I lie, 56 stitches. But I had found previously that 60 stitch sock for my like knitting style is just really big, so I went down to 56. Maybe I should do 58 next time. Because this fits, but it is like, I don't know, I just worry that it's ever so slightly... I don't know, I mean, it fits fine. These are gonna go to a friend for their birthday, and she's got slightly shorter feet than me. I don't know if she has like thinner or thicker feet than me. But if they're similar thickness to my feet, then they will fit her just fine, and as they fit me. I mean, this feels amazing. But here is my point. This is a gift knit for someone whose birthday is in November. I had my test knit that I'm about to show you in this ice yarn. And then I was planning to cast on another one of these sweet shop hats with my ice yarn and mohair, which I talked about last week. And you know what? I'm just sick of that colour. I'm like, I do not want to knit with tiny yarn and that colour. I'm sick of it. I want something different. So I need to carry on knitting on these socks. And I don't hate knitting on them. They feel amazing and blah, blah, blah. Easy to carry around, easy to knit. But I'm just kind of sick of knitting small gauge with this colour. It's been going on for a very long time. So I need a new cast on in my life. And I know that I still have 2 sock whips and a jumper whip in this alpaca. But they're all really fine gauge, and I just want something bigger and chunkier. So I'll show you my whip now. This is my test knit. This is my... So I've just finished the body. The sleeves look very bunched, I will say. But they're gonna, you know, once I make them into t-shirt sleeves, they won't look like little like cap sleeves. Not that there's anything wrong with cap sleeves, but that's not what they're gonna look like. It's got this lovely colour work. Now, after all that work I did with the colour work planning, I don't think I love it. I think this colour pops too much, and these colours like blend too much. And both of those things I think are fine, but they just don't go together very well, if that makes sense. So like, I don't mind the blendiness of this, and I don't mind the poppiness of this, but I just don't think these two things go together very well. But we'll see. I need to block it, and we'll see how it is once it's blocked. And you know, I would love a little break. And you know what? Maybe a good excuse to have a little break is just to block it. Because I could just block it at this stage. It's not really going to, like, make much of a difference. Because what I need to do now is pick up the sleeves, knit the sleeves. It's going to be a t-shirt, but I'm going to knit the sleeves, get back to this lace pattern, which was really nice. See if I still remember it. This lace pattern is lovely. If I don't remember it, it won't take long for me to get it back in the head. So I was able to do this quite happily after a few... It's amazing how knitting works. If you find something confusing, if someone is explaining something about how knitting works and you find it confusing and it goes over your head, just know that for me, that happens all the time. And then you either do it or you don't do it and you never think about it and you come back to it like 3 months later and it just makes more sense. And there was probably nothing you could have done consciously for that to like have made more sense. All you needed was either time or just physically doing it or just practicing it or just never thinking about it. One of those things, and then all of a sudden it just makes perfect sense. And you're like, oh, yeah, I see that. I see how short rows work now. I understand how a heel works now. And it didn't, like, there was nothing you could have done about it. At the time, it made no sense, and then later it makes sense. And that's just how knitting works. So it's like you're knitting a lace pattern and you're like following the chart really carefully, and then all of a sudden you don't need to follow the chart, and it's like, just don't worry about it, just trust that at some point it will happen, or maybe it won't, but maybe next time it will, or maybe the time after that. And that's just kind of how knitting works. It's really interesting. Your brain just kind of sorts out on its own, and you don't have to like worry about it. Anyway, I was marveling at that the other day because I was thinking about there's this cardigan that Roxanne Richardson made that I can't remember the name of it. It's a Ravelry pattern, so she didn't design it, but she wears it sometimes in her podcast, and I think it's called like the Crazy Lines or something, and it has stripes on it, and on this side of the cardigan, the stripes, it's like a background color and then there's some stripes. On this side of the cardigan, the stripes are like small. And then on this side of the cardigan, the stripes are really, really fat. And there's only like 3 of them. And basically, the stripes go across the back and over to this side. And one of those thin stripes becomes one of the thick stripes. And she's like, oh, yeah, it's just done with short rows. And I was like, yeah, it's just done with short rows. That makes sense. I see how that would work. Definitely. I don't understand at all how that would work. And I've used short rows before, and I use short rows, frequently, and I understand that what a short row is you go back and forth. But I just couldn't fathom in my brain how that would make stripes that go from small to fat on one piece of fabric. But I just kind of would like nod and smile. And she wore it like I've seen like 7 or 8 episodes where she's wearing this jumper and she says the same thing. And I think about it again and I go, yeah, still don't get that. And then one day, like a few days ago, I was just walking in the park and I was like, I get how that works now. I get it. And I was like imagining it. I was like, if you make a straight line and then you go back and forth and 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 finally all the way back, that makes like a 2 row on this side and like 6 rows on this side. And it was probably actually doing the short rows for this that was what kind of like unlocked that understanding for me. Because this has a low back and it's curling, but you can't really see, but it kind of makes a curve like this. And so, you do the short rows, you go do 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 do, and that's it basically, and it makes a shape like this. And that was what helped me understand how that cardigan works. I'll get a picture of it from Ravelry and put it up. So anyway, the point is, what I need to do is the sleeves and then pick up the neckline and do the neckline. I'm a little worried that the neckline is going to be big, and I don't like a big neckline. I just don't think it looks good on me. I'll show you what this looks like now, because I can try it on. It is quite soft, actually, this jumper. This, like, fabric, the fabric that this makes. This is done on did it using my Chow Goose, which it's such a good purchase choice. 3.25mm needles. I went down quite a lot. I think that the pattern has 4.5. This would have been a much quicker knit on 4.5 needles, let me tell you. But my gauge was very not right for 4.5 needles. So I'm just really hoping that I can, when I do the neckline, that I can like just at least get like this much out of it, you know, like this much more. It doesn't have to be like a tight crew neck, but just like more of a crew situation. Yes, and I know puff sleeves look silly on me, but they will not be puff sleeves because it's just because the cable is short that they're puffing. So yeah, here we go. Do the old squat for the knitting jumper show off. I'll tuck this in. This is a serious cluster situation, clustering colours. So you can see it's a high-low situation, little split hem. And yeah, it's a nice length. I knit it like exactly to pattern. Basically, I didn't adjust the length any, just followed the pattern. So that turned out nicely for me on my length of torso. And it's a nice level of ease, which I'm really happy about. So yeah, we'll see what I end up thinking once it's like all blocked out and once it has sleeves and a neck. I'm really bad at this might seem weird to you, but like I'm really bad at imagining if a thing is going to look nice before it's finished. So it's like, well, it doesn't have sleeves and it doesn't have a neckline, so I don't know if it looks good or not. It's like my brain can't like picture what it's going to look like. I'm not a very visual person, if you haven't discovered that about me. Here's my floats. Question for you. Do you always catch your floats regularly or do you do it randomly? I sometimes do it regularly, but mostly you can tell it's pretty random. What I mean by that is like when you catch a float in a pattern, if you've got like 5 stitches in between, do you catch it every single time on the 3rd stitch, catch the float, 3rd stitch, catch the float, or do you do it kind of like 3rd stitch or 2nd stitch or 4th stitch or randomly, you know? So there's my floats. There's my floats. Yeah, it's all alpaca, different types of alpaca. One is, the pink is the yarn undyed alpaca, which is the same as the navy I have in my cherry, but different colour. This is drops alpaca. And then these lighter colours are alpaca that I hand spun with a drop spindle years ago. And it was 2 different fleeces that I bought. One was this colour and one was this colour. And then I made a marled one with the 2 together. And this just randomly happened. You can tell that this is a little darker than this, but it was the same skein of wool. So I think that's cool how that kind of turned out. So anyway, this is due in, what's the day? It's due in 12 days. So I think I'm going to block it. That's what I think I want to do. I want to block it because that gives me an excuse to have like 2 days off where I can do something else. These socks I'm not too worried about. I'll work on them this weekend. My cousin's coming to visit, so I won't want to be like focusing on something. I'll just have something easy to do that's small. So I'll carry on working on these. It's so easy to just pick up a sock and knit, isn't it? You can almost do it like mid-podcast accidentally, like whoopsies, oh no, I'm knitting a sock now. Anyway, I have a new section of the podcast that I'm gonna be adding in sometimes, and this is a thing that I do all the time, and I don't know if you do it as well, but I knit things. I think officially I must be a process knitter because I love knitting, and I would say about 25% of the time I enjoy the outcome of the products that I made. Is that just because I'm a really bad knitter? Or is it because I'm very... I don't know why that is. I see all these podcasts and people are like just churning out these beautiful things one after another, and they're all just like gorgeous and like something that you would spend hundreds of pounds on in the shop. And I'm just like, am I just choosing bad, like, am I choosing patterns that don't work for me? Like, what am I doing? Why are my knits, I always like finish it and I go, no, I don't like that. Apart from socks, I mean, socks I generally like. Anyway, so what I've decided to do, the new section of the podcast is things that I've made that I've decided I'm giving away. I've got a pile at the moment, there's 3 of them. And it takes me a minute to decide. Like sometimes I know right away, like I kind of knew right away with this hat that I didn't necessarily want to hold on to it. But other times it takes me a little while to like discover that this doesn't work for me. Like it's not working in my wardrobe. So anyway, so the other friend whose birthday is in October, I think it's next weekend. I won't be there, but I'll be home the weekend after that. I was gonna the one I was gonna make a second one of these for. I've decided she's getting this one because I don't want to use that yarn again to make another thing, and I don't particularly want this hat. I don't think. So I do like it. I think it's really pretty. I just don't think I want it. I don't think there's anything more than that. I just don't think I want it. It's really squish, really soft and lush, and I hope she really loves it. But yeah, this is going to my friend for her birthday. Let's carry on in the pile of things that I'm giving away. I don't know who this is going to, but I'm not going to keep my Maud tee. It was great to work on. I was obsessed with the pattern, but it turned out really nicely, I thought. I think it's the colour. I just don't think that this colour works for me necessarily. I'll try it on again. The other reason is because I don't necessarily think that I love the weight of it, the physical weight of this top. It's kind of heavy. I'm using this alpaca held double for this Maud tee, which makes a nice fabric, but it's quite heavy. And I think the other thing is that I don't love the shape on me. I think that's the main thing. So I like the look of like the longer sleeve and like the longer body. But I don't think it looks nice on me, personally. Like, it looks great on petite knit, but I'm not a long person. So this kind of thing, all it does is make me look like smaller, in my opinion. So like, I think like with a longer sleeve, it needs to be looser than this. Like the t-shirt I'm currently wearing, which I think makes it looks nicer on my body. So like this is a longer sleeve, but it's loose. And so like it kind of, I don't know, I feel like this top swallows me up. And I love this top. I think I'm so proud of myself for making it. I think it turned out really nicely. But I just don't think it works for me. So I need to find someone who is very knit-worthy, who's going to love this top. I don't know if I can think of someone who would love this top. Which is kind of sad, because I would love to give it to someone that I know, someone who would really appreciate it. Because I like giving things to charity, but it's nicer when you've spent all the time making it to like know the person who's having it, or like have some connection with them. And then the final thing, which you've already known, I'm giving this away. I think I know the person this is going to. I think I've settled on it. I was going to try and convince my partner that she wanted it, but I don't think she does, A. And B, I don't think it's long enough for her. Because it's the right length for me, and she has a very long torso. This would be too short for her, but the sleeves would be the right length. She has long arms. I think I know who it is going to, though, and I think they're going to really love it. So I'm pleased about that. So those are the things that I have made that are going away, they're being given away. And I'm not certain if that Minerva Tee test knit is going to stay with me. It might also be given away, and I'm already starting to think, like, who would like that? Not entirely sure. Problem really is that I don't have very many friends. I need more friends, and then I can give away more knits to them. Because I've also already like knit things for all of my family. Like the people who are knit worthy in my life are mum and dad, sister, friend with the 2 babies and a husband. Those people, I already showed you the package that's going to go to them, and I've already shown you the package that's already gone to them. So they've got 2 lots of knitting for all of them. Mum, dad and sister already just got a bunch of knitting that I've shown you. And then they all have things that I've knit them during COVID that are waiting to give to them for Christmas. So my dad hasn't actually. I'm going to make him the 1898 hat, which I'm going to probably get that yarn when I go back home next to make. My mum's getting a pair of mittens, which I will show you when I dig them out to give them to her for Christmas, because they're crazy. They're so interesting. The construction is like mind-blowing. I can't remember the name of them, but I will show them to you. And my sister is getting, what is she getting actually? I'm not sure. Maybe she would like that. I don't know if she would. I don't think she would like the Maud tee. Anyway, so those 3, and then my uncle and aunt and my 2 cousins. And uncle's got a slipover, a cabled slipover. My auntie has got, I feel she's got a cowl, potentially. And then my cousin's got a pair of knitted joggers. This is things I'm waiting to give them for Christmas. So it's like, I can't then start knitting things for them for Christmas because I've already basically knit everyone things for Christmas. I haven't knit my partner anything for Christmas. I have knit her a few pairs of socks. So maybe I'll get going on something for her. So I don't know why I'm saying all of these things. My point is that, like, everyone's already got things lined up for them for gifts. So the more things I make that I need to give away, it's like I'm like, who could I give this to? So that's that. I think I'm gonna block it and give it a little break, because I think I can still finish it in the test even if I have a little break. I will at some point return to my Gibson ruffle blouse, because I'm starting to want it again, like want the item. So I need to return to that, but again, I think I just need a little break from the fine gauge things. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to cast on something with this, which I was talking about before, and I think it is going to be the cardigan. Carbeth. I said the name wrong in the last podcast. I said Carbeth or something, but I wrote it correctly. Anyways, so the Carbeth. I think I'm gonna make the Carbeth because it's 2 strands of DK weight and it's on a size like 6.5mm needle, and I'm like, yes, that is exactly what I want. I was about to do the little chef's kiss that looks like I'm smoking something. Why do I do a chef's kiss like that? It's like this, isn't it? Yes. Sorry. I think that's happening, and it might even happen today because I just need a little like palette cleanse of things like, this is like, gotta do it, you can't have a break from it, you can't have a break. And the 2 socks, I want to finish, but they're for me. So they're not as important as these things that are for people's birthdays or things that are for test knitting. So I keep getting tempted by test knits. I'm like, no. You need a break. You need to do something that you just want to do. So the Carbeth has been in my queue for ages, basically since I first discovered Ravelry. I saw Kate Davies and her designs and I was like, oh yes, love this. So I need to do that. I'm going to show you how I wind yarn because I don't own a Swift and maybe I own a Swift, but I don't own a yarn winder. I have a Swift. That's the thing that like holds it in a circle, right? I do have that, but I don't have the little ball winder that makes cakes. So I'll show you how I wind my yarn if that's vaguely interesting to you, but I will do that once I've shown you this book, which I said I was going to talk about last week and I didn't. This is the book that I'm reading at the moment. I'm about halfway through, almost, not quite. It looks like it because you like move the pages more when you read. It looks thicker. I'm in May. This is kind of organized by the months of the year. So she decides to, Esther Rutter. She's amazing, great author. Really recommend this book. My partner's sister bought this for me for my birthday, and I really have been enjoying it. I sit and I read it when I have my breakfast, and it's a fantastic book. It's got these like great little like drawings at the start of every chapter, and each chapter is basically she basically has a theme for the month. So each month she decides to take a year to like explore Britain's knitted history, and each month of the year it's basically like a combination of like travel and it's like travel journal, knitting journal, history of knitting and textiles in the UK, all combined into one book, which is just amazing. I love it. So she's got the idea is history of Britain's knitting and textiles, and the idea is in 1 year, and the idea is one project per month that's themed on something. So 1 month she made a bikini, and she uses like historical patterns or patterns that are like relevant to the theme. So then another month she did the pussy hat, and she talked about revolutionary knitting. So knitting that was like involved with different revolutions, like les tricoteuses from the French Revolution, and like, anyway, I'm talking about like 100 different things at the same time. The point is that each month has a theme. She knits something that is like to do with that theme, and she talks about the process of knitting it, but not in so much detail that if you weren't a knitter it would be like, it would put you off. So it's not like super in depth, but as a knitter you're like, oh, I know what you're talking about. Oh yeah, I know that. So it's a really good book. I'm really enjoying it and learning things as well, like the fact that apparently in the Second World War there were women that lived near a train station in occupied countries were asked to sit and watch the train station and knit, and they would knit a pearl if the train had supplies in it, and they would knit a knit if the train had soldiers. And so they would just sit there by the window knitting, and nobody would suspect anything because it's just knitting. It's just knitting. And they would like give these like scarves or jumpers away to people that could then find out what all the trains had in them. So cool. So this is what I always do. I use my watch band and I put the end of the yarn inside the watch band, and then I just go like this. And as I say, I learned this technique. It's not really like that big of a deal technique. It's not like anything rocket sciencey. So I wrap it around 2 fingers and then I take it off and I kind of like move it perpendicular, and then I wrap it around 2 fingers again, or 3 fingers, until it's kind of quite thick. And then I move it again, and then I wrap it. And I quite often put the yarn around a chair, but because this is thicker, it's not as big of a deal. When it's like fingering weight or lace weight, it needs to be around a chair, because that stuff gets tangled, let me tell you. But this is DK and it's not going to get tangled. Actually, this is sport weight, technically, which is technically thinner than DK. I was just watching a Watch Barbara Knit YouTube video where she was talking about the yarn weights. I find yarn weight really interesting because I was thinking about it the other day, and I was thinking, yarn, so, you know, there's yarn weights, right? There's lace weight, fingering weight, sport weight, DK weight, worsted weight, Aran weight, bulky weight, super bulky. But a lot of designers now will use, and some people use the wraps per inch, which means like how many times you would have to wrap it around your finger to get 1 inch of finger wrapped, or pencil or whatever. And that's kind of a little bit more scientific, I guess, because it's like, but the problem with wraps per inch is it's like, well, are you know, is it a yarn that is going to bloom, in which case that's kind of slightly different? Is it, are you wrapping it tightly? Are you wrapping it really, really loosely? So wraps per inch is a little bit more scientific than just a name like DK or worsted, but it's not the best. And then some places, I've been noticing lately that a lot of designers are more focused on the yardage or meterage per, say, 100 grams. So when it gets to a ball, I kind of wrap it around more fingers. So like the bigger the ball gets, the more fingers I wrap it around. And this is basically to make it loose enough of a ball that it can be center pull, which I quite like because I like to knit while I walk, and that's a lot easier just to have in your bag if it's center pull than if it's like rolling around. It does work fine rolling around, but if you have other stuff in your bag, it can become a bit of a pain because it'll get tangled more easily than if it's just coming straight from the middle. So back to the yarn weights. More and more designers are using, I've noticed, they're specifying like it needs to be this many yards per 100 grams or this many yards per 50 grams. And I was like, yeah, that seems like the most like scientific, the least subjective, the least like changeable. It's like that's how many yards it is per that many meters, that many grams. Like you can't really change that. You can't tighten that or loosen that. But then I was thinking about it more and I thought, well, but it does seem like the most accurate way, but still it's not 100% accurate, because still you could have a yarn that is really light, and so you get much more meterage per 100 grams, not because it's really thin, which is normally what's assumed. Like if you get 100 grams and you've got 400 meters, one assumes that that's like a really thin yarn, right? Like fingering, like lace weight. And if you get like or fingering weight, whatever. If you get a lot of meters for 100 grams, you assume it's a thin yarn. If you get like 80 meters for 100 grams, you assume that that is a thick yarn. And that makes sense. But what if the yarn is really, really light? So you could have a bulky weight yarn that is like a chainette yarn, or just made of really light fibre and spun really loosely, so that it's actually really bulky, but it is really light in weight, so you get much more meters for the same weight. And then that still doesn't give you the full, and even not like in such a big, it could even just be like, well, if you have a fingering weight yarn but it's spun worsted, it could be a lot heavier, and thus you would get less meters and for the grammage. So none of the different ways of like measuring the thickness of yarn are fully foolproof, basically. Which is why being not obstructed by perfection is a very useful tool in knitting, because perfection will obstruct us if we let it. It's there to obstruct us. I'm almost done, and then I just have one more to go, and I can do a gauge swatch, which is why gauge swatches are so important. Even though they can be annoying. I like the idea of using a small project as a gauge swatch. I saw someone was talking about that, and I was like, genius, I love that. I'm obsessed with that, because that's the kind of thing that I would really do and actually be into, as opposed to, do you know what the perfect thing for a gauge swatch is? Scrunchie. Because especially if you're going to knit a jumper in the round, oh my goodness, right? Am I not right here? If you're going to knit a jumper in the round, you ideally want to do your gauge in the round, the gauge swatch in the round, but who does? And you could do the like fake in the round thing where you pull the yarn back, but then you've got this yarn and you've kind of wasted it because you have to cut it, or if you're me, you don't cut it, you just leave it and then you unravel it all. That was very unclear. One method of gauge swatching where you're knitting in the round but not actually knitting in the round is to knit, and then instead of purl back, you just bring the string behind the knitting and then knit again and bring the string behind and knit. So you're basically doing like it's almost like an I-cord, but instead of making it like tight, you just leave the string really long so that it's still a flat piece of fabric, but you're just knitting. So that way you don't have purls that would like distract the, you don't have any purls that would make the gauge different, because some people purl at a different gauge than they knit. Anyways, my point is, that's kind of technically how one should gauge swatch for doing in the round things, but a lot of people don't, because it's kind of a pain. And then when you block it, it's kind of hard. If you haven't made the like string at the back long enough, you can't stretch it out because the string is too tight and it keeps it like this, so you have to cut it, and then you've wasted all that yarn. So my genius idea is, instead of that, and instead of like doing a gauge swatch in the round, which you then are like, what do I have this tube for? You have the tube for a scrunchie, and then you have a matching scrunchie with every project, which was your gauge swatch, because you can make a scrunchie by just making a tube, and the tube doesn't have to be very big. It's the perfect size. It's not very big. You're not like spending loads of time doing it, and you make a tube. It only needs to be really that big, because then you just attach it together like 3 needle bind off with a bit of elastic in the middle, and you've got a scrunchie. But obviously wash and block it first, measure your gauge first, and then turn it into a scrunchie once you have the gauge. I'm so excited about this. I'm gonna start a hashtag scrunchie gauge. We'll see how many people we can get doing scrunchie gauges. How fun would that be? Scrunchies are in, gauge swatching is in. It's the match made in heaven. So excited to make a scrunchie now. I'm normally one of those people that's pretty bad at gauge swatching. I do it if I know it's gonna be, if I know the project is gonna be like, if I know I'm gonna put a fair amount of effort into the project, it's gonna be like a bit effortful to make. And I also like to do it because I like to see what the fabric's going to look like to see if I like the fabric that I'm going to be producing. So yeah, but I'm not the most religious about gauge swatches, but I feel that this new scrunchie concept could really bring me fully into the gauge swatching world in a big way, and it could be a revolution for me. So I'm really excited. Hashtag scrunchie gauge. So excited about this. So is there anything else? Here's my center pull ball. It's squishy and light and soft. And I'm doing another one so I can gauge swatch because the carbeth is 2 DK weight yarns held double. 2 held double? Or no, you wouldn't say that because that would make it 4, wouldn't it? Be a DK weight yarn held double. So I need 2 to do that. I suppose you could just use 1 and pull from the inside and the outside. But then I suppose you would be joining yarn more often. Is that accurate? Would you? Yeah, you'd be having joins twice as often because each ball of yarn would only last half of the meters that it actually is. So you'd have more joins, you'd have more ends to weave in. Yeah, that's true, and that is a good excuse for what I'm doing. Fine. Another book that I've been reading that I want to heartily recommend is it's called Period Power. It's by Maisie Hill, and if you are a person who has or will be with a menstrual cycle, I highly recommend it. I don't know if I recommend it to someone who doesn't have a menstrual cycle. Potentially, it's very interesting, and I think that like knowing things about other groups of people that you're not like a part of, I guess, is always interesting, and it's always fascinating, and it always like provides insight into your own life. So if you're that kind of person, then I would recommend it to you as well. But anyways, Period Power, it's so fascinating, and I think one of the biggest things that I've been like taking away from it is basically she talks about like what your hormones do in a menstrual cycle and what the purpose of them is and how you can take advantage of the different things that your hormones at different parts of your menstrual cycle make easier for you and make more challenging, and how you can kind of, through knowing this information and paying attention to this information instead of like blocking it out and pretending like it doesn't exist, you can like really improve the way you live your life, basically, instead of sort of being like la 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 hormones, going like, oh okay, so this is what this is for, this is why this hormone is here, and this is what it's trying to do, and this is how I could like take advantage of it, and this is also how I can support myself if it's, you know, has a strong effect on me. And I just find that so amazing. Just the idea of being like, look, like, pay attention to things that are happening to you instead of judging them and trying to pretend like they're not there, which is something I think that we learn to do really, and it's really easy to do, to just judge bits of ourselves and pretend like they're not there. And it's something that just feels so easy to do, at least to me. And I just think the idea of instead of judging it, just seeing it and going, yeah, you're right there. And then thinking, like, instead of judging it and trying to pretend it's not there, and you see it, pretend it is there, and then you, instead of judging, you think to yourself, like, how can I support myself with this thing that's here? Whether it is, like frustration or anger or tiredness or, feeling overwhelmed or feeling really anxious. I, for so long, would just try to ignore anxiety and pretend it wasn't there, and it had a really strong effect on me mentally. Really, 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 really strong. Like, I've had many mental breakdowns, and I've had lots of different problems that have arisen from it that I wouldn't have known were arising because of it, because I was ignoring it and pretending it wasn't there, and then just going like, why is this happening to me, and it's such a revolutionary idea to me to just be like, yeah, this is I'm feeling really anxious, and I'm gonna think about how I can support myself through this, instead of thinking about, why is this happening to me? Why am I doing this? Why can't I deal with this situation like everyone else is dealing with it? Why is this so hard for me? And just going, it's hard for me. It's okay for things to be hard or things to make you feel anxious, and then from there just moving to a point of, what can I do to help myself or support myself while I'm feeling this way? I feel like I've just repeated myself 100,000 times. And I apologise for that. I might cut this whole section out. But if I don't, let me know. I'm quite a philosophical person. That was terrifying. The wind just opened the door to the balcony, and it was terrifying. The noise, everything. So I have my 2 squishy balls of yarn. I have philosophized during the yarn squishing time, and I'm gonna leave you there. So if you want to join in my Not Obstructed by Perfection knit along, the way to do that is to subscribe to my channel and follow me on Instagram at Naomi Joy Knits, and then post a project that you're working on, and just describe like how you're using the concept of not being obstructed by perfection. That's all you have to do to join in on the knit along, and I will be hosting it until the new year, and I'll just be probably finding prizes in my trips to yarn shops, or even from my stash, things that I think people might like. And I've already done one giveaway for it on Instagram. So I will do another one at another point, probably maybe at the start, maybe at the end of October, or maybe sometime in November. But yeah, I think it's a really fun way of like reminding ourselves, like, to be kind, I guess, to ourselves, and to go forth and doeth the knitting, and not stop ourselves by worries about whether it's perfect or whether everything is just right, because it's probably not. It's probably really hard to be just perfect. I've definitely Probably all this talk about anxiety. It's getting to me. What else is there to say? Thank you for joining me, and I will see you next time. See you later.